Happy Wednesday, Poetry Day. Hey, before I start, I want to show you something that I did show you before, but I've got the most wonderful set of friends. And one of them, Helen, made this necklace for me that's actually an attachment so that I can always be proper and put on my mask when I'm out in public, and then it drops down below, and I don't have to even think about it. It's the most wonderful present. I really appreciated it. Now, that's poetry in procedure. We're going to go to poetry in life with Edith Wharton. This is selected poems of Edith Wharton. Now, we did do this book, I believe, last Wednesday, but I just did part of it, and I'm going to run to the end of this volume because I think it has some treasures well worth remembering. It's edited by Irene Goldman-Price. Really quite extraordinary. And I think you'll enjoy reading this because it's like a biography, only better, because little snippets of her life that relate to the poem that follows are woven throughout the entire book. So you get a sense of her life in New York, her early years, her married years, her divorced years, just about everything that she's gone through. And of course, one of the markers in her life is, was, and always shall be poetry. This unpublished poem, probably written when Wharton was in her 30s, speaks of lifelong love, with a kind of nostalgia for the future. Its musicality is exceptional. Its verse form is close to a Spanish sextilla, which calls for 6-line stanzas of 8 syllables each, rhymed A, B, B, A, B, A. When we read the poem aloud, the cadences and repetition of sound deepen the mood of the poem and the tension of love versus the inexorability of age and death. And it's aptly called song. Let us be lovers to the end, O you to whom my soul is given, whose smiles have turned this earth to heaven, fast holding hands as we descend life's pathway, devious and uneven. Let us be lovers to the end. Dear, let us make of time a friend to bind us closer with his cares. And though grief strike us unawares, no poisoned shaft that fate can send shall wound us through each other's prayers, if we are lovers to the end. Let us be lovers to the end, and growing blind as we grow old, refuse forever to behold how age has made the shoulders bend, and winter blanched the hair's young gold. Let us be lovers to the end. Whichever way our footsteps tend, be sure that if we walk together, they'll lead us to realms of sunny weather, by shores where quiet waters wend. At eventide we shall go thither, if we are lovers to the end. This was written between 1889 and 1893. This is, which follows, a little poem, most likely written when Wharton was in her late 20s or early 30s. A little while, my sweet, love holds our linked feet in rosy chains together. Then comes the wintry weather, the roses fall and fade, and lo, our feet have strayed, and we know not whither. Wharton recorded this poem in one of her notebooks. She employs the rhyme scheme of the quintilla or Spanish quintain in one of her most beautiful fusions of sound, form, and feeling. I have had your love, and I have seen it go, and still there is a glory on the western hill, and I can bear the faces that I know. I have had your love, and I have seen it go. It was not sorrow that I felt before, for then I felt myself an alien among men. And now I see my face in every door, and hear o'erhead my pain that walks the floor. And wind arises, and the land is green. I know there must be veins that feel the tree sap flow. I have forgotten what the seasons mean. I have had your love, and I have seen it go. Sometimes bitterness overcame even the consolation of the Psalms. Martyrdom. I quote, "The bones that thou hast broken shall rejoice." End quote. False prophecy. Oh, vain and lying voice. The bones that love hath broken never again shall hope make whole, nor pleasure ease their pain. How long the way is that they have to tread, whose feet against the thorns of love have bled, how blind and wearily they grope, whose eyes love's lightning blasted in the morning skies. What ails all mirth, all virtue, all desire? To feather and fall like ashes without fire, beneath the frozen touch of those who try to find some warmth in life when love goes by. Yea, love hath turned our honor to a ghost, and naught seems real save that which we have lost, and not until the grave. Oh, lying voice, the bones that love hath broken shall rejoice. The sonnet was one of Wharton's favorite genres, with its strict rules for meter and rhyme, and its invitation to turn an argument. She was not quite the amateur sonneteer she claims to be in this 1891 poem. She had published the accomplished St. Martin's Summer 10 years earlier. But this one aims high. Petrarch, Shakespeare, whose name she spells in its variant form, and Shelley were all masters of the sonnet. The next three poems show Wharton directly addressing the form. Now, I've got to take just a teeny sidebar. You know, Amelia Community Theater, in the first really pandemic show that we did, I directed that show. It was Two Across, and it was really quite marvelous. Now, I realize I'm slightly prejudiced, but I had two wonderful actors and a wonderful set and just a wonderful piece of theater. It was all about two total strangers who meet on what amounts to a subway, a transit vehicle. They're all alone. It's the dead of night, or actually the dead of early morning. And each has a drama going on in their lives, and they meet in the most amazing way. The New York Times crossword puzzle, which they end up parsing together. And here's a spoiler. The show's over. You can't go back and see it, unfortunately. They both win in the game of life, as well as the game of the crossword puzzle. But you're probably saying, what is this guy ranting on about? I just want to point out to you, there were some wonderful poems by Petrarch that are mentioned in this basically contemporary play. So the relevance of 17th century is viable in the 21st. And by the way, this was written pre-pandemic, but you know what? I directed it, and we acted it with masks on, or if we were 10 feet across, away from each other, mask off. But the second we came within shouting distance of each other, mask on. And strangely enough, even though the playwright had not intended it, there were some delicious moments of humor when people realized the situation they were in, the world they were in, and oh my goodness, they had Petrarch's love for Laura as their guide. Now you see, that wasn't totally off point, but I just had to share that with you. Now, the poem that started this digression is The Sonnet. Pure form, that like some chalice of old time, contain'st the liquid of the poet's thought, within thy curving hollow gem enwrought, with interwoven traceries of rhyme, while o'er thy brain the bubbling fancies climb. What thing am I that undismayed have sought to pour my verse with trembling hand untaught into a shape so small, yet so sublime? Because perfection haunts the hearts of men, because thy sacred chalice gathered up the wine of Petrarch, Shakespeare, Shelley, then receive these tears of failure as they drop, sole vintage of my life, since I am fain to pour them in a consecrated cup. Now, I do want to show you something that I think is kind of interesting. This book, and the reason I came to it for 2 sessions, is that it is just so spectacular. Look at, let me see. Notice something on this side of the page. You see what amounts to handwritten verbiage. Well, that's from the notebook, and that is a facsimile of exactly the way Edith Wharton wrote it. You will see her handwriting. You will see it dated April 23rd, 1909. And it says above it, here we have a much more intimate poem. Wharton inscribed it on the flyleaf of the copy of Artemis to Acton that she gave to Morton Fullerton, dated April 23rd, 1909. It discloses her passionate wish to be heard and understood, and implies that Wharton had used poetry all her life to express her innermost feelings, yearning for a sympathetic listener. Sad indeed to find that Fullerton's copy was hardly opened. Only the mortal lease, the poem she wrote for him, seems to have been read. And here it is. As birds from some green tropic gloom, by homeless seas and blinding sands, wing onward to an unknown doom in unimagined northern lands, trusting, as day and night they fare across the rolling world's unrest, their buds in some far April air, the tendril curved to hold their nest, or painted deserts mocked with light, and shores where bitter surges roll. Year after year these songs took flight from hidden coverts of the soul. No instinct of envisioned springs upheld with them the hope of rest, yet let them fold their happy wings, one wondering moment in your breast. Here we have Wharton's tribute to Shelley, written after visiting his grave in Rome. The phrase corcordium, heart of hearts, is engraved on his tomb at the Protestant cemetery there. Shelley drowned in the Gulf of Spezia and was cremated on the beach at Viareggio, but his heart did not burn. It was preserved by his wife, Mary, and at her death interred in St. Peter's Churchyard, Bournemouth, England. As a young teenager, Wharton received from her parents a gift of the great Buxton Forman edition of Shelley. And she wrote, I quote, "Then the gates of the realms of gold swung wide, and from that day to this I don't believe I was ever again, in my innermost self, wholly lonely or unhappy." End quote. Images in this poem recall Adonis, Shelley's elegy for Keats, as well as the cloud, and Ode to the West Wind. Corcordium. I came, O heart of hearts, but not to sing where mightiest lips are mute. One April day when, like a pearl dissolved in light, Rome lay clasped in the throbbing hollow of the noon, I came to pluck one pale anemone from the green turf that covered thee too soon, since lovelier far than earth-born buds must be the veined flowers that from thy life blood spring. Long, Long I lay and saw the Roman's tomb extend its deepening shadow to the east, till suddenly the pomp of sunlight ceased. Day dropped like a dead warbler from the sky, and over the shut flowers and songless trees that watch above the grave's melody, like a great vulture borne adown the breeze, night swept as suddenly with full-fledged plume. Flower-like, mine ear upon thy grave took root, straining to hear thy beating through the ground, when the starred silence shook with mighty sound, such as the desert's lone ecstatic hears, quivering of throats visible, that seemed to loosen all the music of the spheres, as though all loveliness that flashed or beamed to melody its radiance should transmute. Not there, the voices sang, beneath the sod the quenchless heart of Shelley beats like flame, but one with a great heart from whence it came. It pulses through the universe and thrills in the wind's whisper to the listening trees, and the storm's challenge to the startled hills. It springs at dawn from cloud-built palaces and walks upon the water like a god. Go forth and give to the revolving year thy chained spirit, as a maiden frees her prison songster to the homeless breeze. Let the stars be to thee like lovers' eyes, when soul sees soul in sacramental hour, closer than lovers' arms the enfolding skies, with changeful benisons of sun and shower, and moonlit silences on peaks austere. Do battle with the ocean's crested towers, when the wild gale upbuilds them to the sky, and the white foam flags from their bastions fly, or race the tempest through the cloudy plain, when the leashed lightning from their bondage start, and know thine ecstasy, out-throbbing pain, is but the breath of the eternal heart, whose voice was Shelley's once, and now is ours. And here we have, the first one, I'll cheat a little and look ahead, is truly one of my favorites, but I digress. As we have seen, Wharton often experimented with poetic forms. On the flyleaf of her 1916 copy of Paul-Louis Couchot's Sages en Poètes Danse, she practiced a few poems after the Imagist model, derived from Asian poets, that was then popular with the contemporary poets Amy Lowell, Ezra Pound, Hilda Doolittle, and others. Later, she published them with slight changes in the wording in the Yale Review. Wharton had recently been given an honorary doctorate by Yale University. Her last visit to America was to receive the award. While we have no direct evidence that Wharton read Amy Lowell's poetry, she certainly knew of her. Lowell's older brother, Percy, had been best man at the Wharton wedding. Lyrical Epigrams. I'll just run through a few of these. They're short. 1. My little dog, a heartbeat at my feet. I love that. Spring. A winter wind, primroses, and a new furrow. Friendship. The silence of midnight. A dying fire. And the best, unsaid. 4. A pointed steeple above square trees, rustic France. 5. A blunt steeple over round trees, rural England. Solemn tum. Across these giant ruins, the greatest cloud shadows dart like lizards. These were all from 1920. Wharton spent her life striving for beauty in decor, in dress, in landscape, and in art. Here is a darker look at what such a devotion can mean for a devotee, be she artist or onlooker. Or perhaps it's a commentary on changing taste. Beauty. What is this no pang that makes us thine, beauty? Thou goddess veiled from eyes of men, poised on blue pinnacles beyond our ken, or smothered in some incense-clouded shrine, where all night long the blackening tapers shine. Who put within thy hand the blade of pain that streaks thy votaries with a bloody stain? Who hid thy face, yet made it so divine? Of old thy dwelling was in bodies fair, close columned temples, gardens brimmed with bloom. Now, grown intangible to search and prayer, thou hoverest like a phantom in the gloom, and none can say that thou art here or there, bright as the day star, darkling as our doom. Supernatural thoughts. Wharton shared with her friend Henry James a love of ghost tales, and she wrote quite a number of them. Here we find poems written throughout her lifetime from the world of the dead, and poems and thoughts that haunt one in the dead of night. They're chilling and fun to read, yet there is more to be found here. These poems explore the mystery of suffering and death, and they dip into the deep well of human fear, fear of dying and burial, fear of being forgotten and replaced, fear that this life is all there is, and fear that it is not all there is, that our spirits may continue to yearn and suffer through eternity. Wharton wrote this poem during the summer of 1908 when she was living in her beloved Massachusetts home, the Mount. for which she did the interiors. Yet she chose not to include it in the volume that she was preparing that fall for Scribner's. One might ask, why was it not good enough? Too revealing? Perhaps it just didn't fit with the general scheme of the volume, Artemis to Acton, in which the previous 3 poems appeared. We have all been troubled by thoughts that keep us awake. Poe famously embodied it as a raven. Do you remember? We shared, quoth the raven, never more once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary. Well, here's Edith. A knock. It was not the blind's tap against the pane that broke my sleep, but the knock of the same old thought against the brain. I heard it creep down the dim road across the misty lawn under the black boughs. Each night it wakes me, sits with me till dawn. Then through the house steals masked and sated from the harmless light, but all the day it lurks and watches barely out of sight, secret and grey. The shadows hide it, and the silence hides till night again. Then through the unsuspecting house it glides, knocks on my brain, unlatches all the windows of the soul, points out to me from every one the lifeless wastes that roll to a dead sea. And on the dead sea, under a dead sky, moved by no gale, shows crawling toward me like a crawling fly, the same black sail. Each night I lie and wait for that low rap against the brain that used to be no more than the blind's tap upon the pane. Now, I want to share with you a secret. Do you know how Connor controls my mouth and my mind? He has a tombstone-shaped porcelain thingy where he writes on it 30 minutes. It's like in theater, there's a hook. Well, I want you to see the story and song hook as wielded by Connor.
Seems unfair.
Oh, he just said it seems unfair. I've told you my deepest secret now. At that point, I'm going to leave you and prepare for the end of the week's special, which will be something from Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Till then.